Okay, Erin, go ahead.
Okay, it is 7:01 p.m., excuse me, on Thursday, February 4th, 2021, and I call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Chagrin Falls Village Council in order to hold a public hearing for a use variance at 139 Bell Street. Before I give this over to Rob to really dig into it, just as a reminder, the charter allows Village Council to hear any decision of or review any decision of BZA when 3 members of council petition for us to do so, and that's what's happened here. So, Mr. Jameson, could you bring us up to speed? And oh wait, we have to do roll call. I'm sorry.
Call, yes.
Roll call, please.
Okay, Grube?
Here.
Rocky?
Here.
DiBernardo?
Here.
Newell?
Here.
Weibel?
Here.
Evans? Evans? Jan? You have to, you're up. Take yourself off mute there.
Aye, yes.
Okay, Ed Rogoff.
Here.
Okay. All are present.
Okay. I guess the agenda says that we have people speak to the agenda items. I thought we had to get into the public hearing first.
We
Dale?
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Rob, could you give us an overview of what the question that we're looking at? And then we'll move into having people speak.
Sure, absolutely.
Can I interrupt, Rob, before you start?
Absolutely.
We want to let everybody know that everybody has to be sworn. They have to testify under oath. And because of the way we handle the Zoom meetings, we will swear each person in individually. So before anybody speaks, we want them to be able to have their video open so we can see them and hear them. And then I will swear each person in who's going to testify. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Rob.
All right, November 12th of 2020, we received an occupancy application submitted from Joseph Capranci for a men's hair and personal care use to go into one of the units at 139 Bell Street, which is an office building owned by Bell Street Properties, LLC. Harry Edwards, our zoning inspector, received that request and returned it as not an approved use and returned the check that is submitted with the application. On November 17th, we received word that the property owner and the applicant wanted to move forward and file a variance application for that ruling. I issued an official zoning review letter on November 17th of 2020 that showed that the use of a barber shop in an office district was not permitted according to section 1135.02 of our code, which is permitted uses in the office district. And as we get into that further, I can bring that up and screen share that if you like. Also on November 17th, I received a variance application filed by Andrew Shibley, who is representing the property owner, Bell Street Properties, LLC. And then the Board of Zoning Appeals on January 5th, 2021, heard the variance request, which is a use variance, to allow a barber shop, which is regulated as a retail service or personal service use, to be allowed in the office district. That variance was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals at a 5-0 vote. On January 13th of 2021, a total of 3 council people contacted us and requested a hearing to review the matter, which is our code requirement to have this decision heard. And then we went ahead and scheduled the review hearing for tonight. Council received an email I sent reviewing not only section 1135.02, the permitted uses of that section, but also section 1111.07, reasons for granting variances, and also section 1111.10, action by council, that all pertain to your review process tonight. I did want to make one more point. In the Board of Zoning Appeals hearing, There was some question as to what the previous occupancy was in the space at 139 Bell Street that the barber shop is hoping to occupy. We didn't have clarity at that meeting from the administration, for myself or Harry, on exactly what that occupancy was. Prior to that, it was stated it was some sort of personal service / administrative type use. The following day after that Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, Harry Edwards researched the occupancy permits, and we have one on file from April of 2005 for the previous applicant, and that was for an administrative office use for that space. And I sent that along to council as well, and I do have that able to screen share as needed. So that kind of gives an overview of everything. If anyone has any questions, let me know, and I have all the documents that can be shared as needed.
Okay. Before we bring the property owner in and start hearing testimony, do we have any questions on what Mr. Jamison said from council?
Aaron, this is Darren. I do. You may have covered it, Rob, and I may have missed it, but BZA's vote on that variance was, what was the score there?
It was 5-0.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well then, do we have the property owner and or the business owner in? I feel like I saw their names a second ago on the participant list. I assume they would like to testify. So what we'll do is, if you are an attendee who would like to testify, you're going to use the raise your hand function on your Zoom screen, and that will allow Christy to begin moving people over. So we'll start with doing the property owner and business owner. So Mr. Shibley.
I'm moving Mr. Shibley over.
Hey, Rob, can you remove the agenda from the screen? It'll probably be easier for us to see.
Throw people in.
Hello, everyone.
Andrew, let me swear you in. If you're ready.
So actually, Dale, similar to last time, but Larry actually is going to be doing the presentation if he can join. He's trying to join on a phone call, so I'm not sure if he's showing up. Do you see him on?
I do not see him on through a phone call. We do not have any phone in callers at this time.
Okay.
So let me swear you in.
Okay.
You raise your right hand. Do solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the village council will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure how I know, well, he's calling me now. I know he was trying to get on the video. The link wasn't working for him. He's calling me now. Perhaps if his audio is clear through the phone, we can do it that way. If you can't hear him, I can give the presentation.
Dale, does that work, or do we need to be able to see them?
No, we can do it if he's on the phone.
Dad?
Andrew, this is the moderator, Christy Holmes. If you give me Larry's phone number, I can call him and perhaps talk him through how to attend the meeting.
Okay. That works.
Andrew, I'm blocked now from trying too many times. It won't let me on.
Okay. Apparently he's been blocked. Can you hear him clearly though? I think he can give it sounded like you're able to hear him.
Yes.
Yep. Dale, can we hear him well enough? Does this work?
Yeah, I think so. Larry, I'm gonna trust you raising your right hand. I'm gonna swear you in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the village council will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you all understand the concept here. We're here because of a tenant application for a small barber shop at 139 Bell, and I guess we received the earlier approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals, and now we're in front of council. The area up there has had, years and years of retail right next door to us. There's a small building between us and the art center that has been mostly mostly retail over the years, and it's zoned the same as ours. And across the street, obviously, is retail, zoned and used either way for retail or office. We have thousands of square feet there that are exclusively office, and attempting to use a small space, a few hundred square feet, for a small shop. Its demand use for parking and everything is no different. We're the primary parking lot for all the tenants in the other buildings around there. The art center, the church, the overflow from the Era Plaza, all that parking goes to us. Residential neighbors park there. And the prior use had some cosmetic type use as well for the same space.
Okay, do we have any questions for Mr. Shibley from council?
So the previous occupancy permit was for office space, administration work. It wasn't for any type of sales or any other objective, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Correct? I mean, this might have been more of a question for Rob.
Yes, that is correct,
Yeah.
Andrew.
For Rob, okay.
I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it was cosmetic consulting, and she did some little processing of, I'm not sure what, with people. In today's market, it's getting harder and harder to find tenants, and some of these code restrictions seem outdated. Especially when historically a lot of it has had to do with parking. We're a big provider of parking for the whole little neighborhood there, and have never given anybody a hard time about it. We have a 60-car parking lot that's never, occupied.
Can I ask a question? So there's a legislative process that allows for the changing or adjustments of our zoning language. It goes to planning and zoning, then to council for the public hearing. Did you look at going through that process versus the use variance?
I think we were advised by the administration to go through a variance.
That is the standard response when someone submits a request that doesn't meet code. They can either change their plans or submit for a variance. On a big picture scale, if they want to have planning and zoning address that code section and look at possible changes to recommend the council, that's a much bigger process.
Right.
I haven't received that request or discussed that in this matter.
Well, right, but if the question is that it's getting more and more difficult to rent retail space, then is this a larger question than a single use? Than a use variance question. I guess that's all I was, that's where I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that a business like this cannot afford downtown retail space. And the parking is way more difficult. It makes it, to take a Main Street slot and put a barber shop in, and people have to park 100 yards or 200 yards away or whatever. Just makes it more difficult, and the formulas are tough. The bigger difficulty in the village right now is the office space, and it continues to decline. As landlords, we continually get requests from people. They want to consolidate their spaces or eliminate them.
Okay.
The whole idea of working from home and everything. Practically every tenant we have has their office space in question.
So I guess based on what Aaron just said and then what you're saying, the question is, would it have been a good approach to try to consider rezoning that office building? Is that what I know that's not a question necessarily for the city.
We still are committed to keeping it primarily as an office building. I don't think it's conducive for retail in the true sense of putting a shop in that sells objects. But, you know, service like a barber shop is so common in so many buildings in so many different areas, in downtown and Beechwood or wherever you might go. I mean, salons and barber shops are common in office buildings.
So this definitely could be dealt with a text amendment. And planning and zoning has done this in the past. The travel agency, I forget the name of it. It's in the old
Travelon.
Travelon or Jen's?
Travelon, yeah.
Travelon.
So they needed an amendment to move into where they were, and we changed the zoning on that little stretch of the Triangle Park. Somebody wanted to go into the Masons building at the other corner, and it was suggested to change that zoning to regular retail. The landowner didn't want to change the zoning, so he didn't. And now there's a beautiful art store there in that space.
Right.
So planning and zoning has done this on numerous occasions when there were questions about zoning language. Text amendments are not difficult. That's the Spillway project was handled with a text amendment. There was no rezoning on that. It was a text amendment to the limited industrial district. So it's a common practice for us to do that. And certainly when this came up, I spoke with our planner about it, looked at the code and, thought of some, ways that we can deal with this type of situation. Certainly not rezoning the whole building, but possibly allowing retail services as a small portion of an office building.
Because it's going to open up. I mean, as you said, you're going to have a problem renting office space, I think, from the here and on. And it's going to open up your options. I think that would open up your options to not have to be back in front of BZA. If you want to put an example, somebody comes to you and wants to have a tailor shop in, one of your buildings. That would also be a service kind of similar to, a barber shop. It's going to, you'll be back here. And so that's kind of a big question.
One thing to consider if we do look at doing a,
with that, but generally our feeling is that we would like to keep it primarily as office. For this particular use, to wait for the process of changing the language would basically kill it. We'd be going through all that effort, and then we wouldn't have a tenant to put in, because he's not gonna be able to last that long waiting.
Okay.
And again, we're committed. We feel like we're going through a phase, and ultimately, there'll be some office uses. We don't really want to convert and make it a retail building.
Larry, is there not any space on Main Street or in the central shopping district that this gentleman could occupy?
Well, the smallest space I have is about 2 or 3 times the size of this space. And even if he figured out a way to use the space, the cost is prohibitive for what he's doing. They're providing, Chagrin is one of the few areas where men can get very affordable haircuts. And part of it is because they can find affordable spaces and there's a demand. If you're trying to put it in the prime Main Street spaces where we have these huge investments in, way bigger per square foot investments in the real estate, the formula just doesn't work to pay $25 or $30 a foot for a barbershop.
I understand that, but how many people will he have in that barber shop at a time? It's a small space.
One or two people.
How's he going to manage that?
Pardon me?
How is he going to manage only having 2 people?
Because it's a very affordable rent in a small space.
Aaron, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
I do. Thanks. I'm just patiently waiting. So I just want to make sure that I understand why we're here. It's not whether or not you like barbershops, or it's precedent, correct? I mean, that's what we're talking about is the variance that was granted and whether or not we're going to see this from other people that are property owners downtown, that their office tenants will then want retail as well. That's why we're having this conversation. It's probably obvious to everyone. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that's the crux of the conversation.
That, and it was also portrayed that the previous tenant had some sort of service going on in there, and we didn't have the occupancy permit at that time to look at that information. So with the change in the occupancy permit, not granting that, so whether they were doing it or not, you know, that's a whole different conversation. But having the occupancy permit and maybe not fully understanding what was the information that was given to us in the meeting is another reason why we're relooking at it, because there was a change in the information that we were given. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine, Andrew. I just want to make sure I'm not wondering what the not objection, but caution is. And I just want to make sure I'm aware and I do understand.
Cool.
Darren, I'm going to follow up on that. I'm one that believes that we need to really uphold our zoning ordinances and rules and use of space as much as we can, or as they get watered down, there's really no reason to have them. I understand that there's probably significant cost per square foot on Main Street that it is up on Bell, but I don't know that that's enough of a reason to start changing the zoning for different uses. And I also wanted to ask about, has anybody talked to the other tenants about them being in a district that doesn't allow this type of business, and do they have any objection to that?
I wondered about that as well, Jim.
Larry, do you have any information from other tenants?
Other tenants in our building?
Yeah.
I would be very surprised that anybody would have any concern about it.
I can actually,
basically, the way our building is laid out, nobody would even hardly know what's going on in there.
and I can actually jump in on that as well. I was actually with Joe at the property one day. We were looking around and another tenant was walking by to use the restroom. And we mentioned that Joe was applying to use to open a barber shop in there. And the other tenant, who's actually a newer tenant to the building and has really enjoyed it so far, big smile on his face and said, "Oh, congratulations, that's great." And so yeah, one or two tenants I've run into, I think there, and everyone's had a positive reaction and friendly with Joe about it.
Okay. Do we have any other specific questions for the Mr. Shibley? Otherwise, I'd like to, we may have some other people who want to speak, so I'd like to give other people the opportunity.
So I'd just like to make a couple comments, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the thing is, though, that this is a use variance, which is a unique, special kind of a variance. It's not like the typical area variances that are traditionally given. And,
Right.
and the code section has certain requirements. And so we need to look at some evidence that would support most of the 6 things that you need to look at in giving a use variance, because it is a special thing. It's basically changing the zoning in a specific district. So it's something different to look at. And I'm not sure that the evidence was presented to support all the factors that are required for a use variance.
Doesn't it have to be that that it can't be used for it couldn't be used as an office space? Like not just that you can't find a tenant. Could we review the requirements for the use variance?
Sure. If you look at 111107,
I'll screen share that.
Thank you.
yeah, under B3, it says the property cannot be used for the purposes for which it is zoned. When we were at the Board of Zoning Appeals, the question came up, does the board have to find that all 6 criteria have been met?
Okay.
And it's a difficult question to answer, but the language in that section doesn't say that you have to meet all 6. But what my answer was is that there had to be some basis to support, the reasoning why you might not find So for example, that if number 3, that it can't be used for the purposes for which it's zoned, if you couldn't meet that, there'd have to be some compelling evidence on the other factors that would support still granting the variance.
Did everybody get that?
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, it's well done, as usual.
It's a little interpretation on my part, but I wrote that, so I'm allowed to.
You did. You know what you meant. Okay.
So is that why we don't, it's not real clear how we can rule on it?
Something like that. Yeah.
I had that section highlighted on the screen.
So we could have more billable hours when we were in this point.
Okay, so
All right.
If you recall, we used to not allow use variances. And
Right.
when I became law director, I said I felt that there are circumstances where you really want to do it. And so that's why we created the language. And then we actually changed it again in 2019 to add those 6 specific criteria.
okay, Mr. Wyville, you had your hand up first.
So I'm sorry, I don't want to make this too big or too dramatic of a point, but I'm another new guy. And I feel like, as was mentioned earlier, it was a unanimous vote by BZA, and I'm caught between this diligence and compassion argument. You know, we had to create diligent creating the rules and compassionate, enforcing them. So I'm just interested to hear what the public has to say. And the obviously we've got rules on the books here that we have to be very careful about. So I just feel like I need to say that. And it's not really a question. I'm not really looking for an answer. I just feel like that needs to be stated.
Angie, and then we're gonna take, if you are in the public and wish to testify, you can go ahead and start using the raise your hand function. We'll start bringing in other folks who want to testify after Ms. DiBernardo asks her question.
My question is for Dale on the reasons for granting the use variances. The number 2 is due to unique conditions existing on the property. Was the intent for that these unique conditions would be limited in time? So something like we're in a tough economic condition could be a condition, or would it be something that would exist for all time? I guess I'd originally seen it as.
It's neither of those.
It's neither. What is it? Okay.
Yeah, a long time ago when I first started practicing,
Yeah.
there was on use variances, what they would say is that if you find that this condition exists throughout the office district or retail district, whatever you're in, you shouldn't be granting variances. You should change your zoning.
Right.
So that's the basis for this, is that this isn't a common problem throughout the office district. It's a problem that's unique to this particular property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, I have Justin Herdman with a hand raised. May I move him into the conversation?
Let's get some more testimony. Mr. Herdman, we will need to swear you in. Just,
Takes a moment to transfer.
can you hear me while I'm chit-chatting?
Unmute.
Okay, we're getting there. Justin, are you able to use video?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, we just don't see it.
All right, there we go.
There you go. Now we got you.
Maybe
Okay, would you?
You'll be able to see your face.
Yeah. Last time I saw you, you didn't have that hair on your face, but.
Yeah, well, it's one of the virtues of being unemployed for 2 months.
Can you raise your right hand, please?
Yes.
Do you swear the testimony you'll give to the village council will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Herdman.
Okay, thank you. This will be brief. My interest in this was raised because of the nature of the variance request, that being a use variance. And so I submitted a letter to Mayor Tomko, and I also carbon copied Council President and Mr. Markowitz and Mr. Jameson as well. So I just have 2 points, and I'll start with the broader one first. Because this is a use variance, and because I am very sensitive to what Mr. Shibley said about the difficulties faced by landlords in the current economic climate, I don't think any of that's going away anytime soon. I would just repeat my request in that letter that this be taken very seriously. And I'm hearing all the right things from council representatives here. So I'm quite satisfied with what I've heard. I think you guys are taking this very seriously. And the fact that you're doing this as a special meeting of council says quite a bit about your diligence as a group. So really appreciate that, because I, as concerned as I am about the pressures faced by the landlords and the need for there to be consideration of conversion of office space, I think that you're also going to probably see at some point in time requests related to conversion of retail space or other types of space. And I just want to make sure that we're taking a long-term approach to what comes in front of BZA and then ultimately ends up in front of council. So I think this is actually a really important time to be thinking about these issues. The second thing I wanted to point to, and Mr. Rocky, I think, has already alluded to this. I did watch the original BZA hearing, and my interpretation of this, and obviously I defer to Mr. Rocky as the representative to BZA, but my interpretation of the consideration, the deliberation of this issue was that this was a close call, at least for several members of the BZA. And that the tipping point for many of them was what was presented, and maybe it was mistaken, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. But the idea that this space had already been used for up to 15 years as a salon services space or some sort of space that was providing salon services, and that seems to not be the case based on the occupancy permit, but also what I provided to the mayor was the lack of any kind of license from the Board of Cosmetology for salon services in that space. And that is an important point. This is not, just not to say that there's any problem with selling jewelry, but this is not a store that's selling jewelry. This is actually a provision of services that's subject to licensing and inspection by a state agency. And that has, the importance of that, I think, has been magnified over the past year with respect to COVID and the precautions that we've had to have many of our salon and barbershop owners take. There's a reason why we have the inspection and regulatory regime that we have around salon services and barbershop. So again, I think that that's been cleared up based on what I've heard tonight. And so I just wanted to reemphasize what I had submitted to the mayor and thank all of you for your service. Really appreciate it as someone who calls this place home.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Herdman?
I've got a question for him.
Go ahead.
How would he feel if the zoning was changed to allow services in office buildings within,
if the code was changed?
Yeah.
I actually, so I heard Mrs. Rogoff say that. So I served on Planning and Zoning Commission and BZA, both as a member of the public and also as a council representative. And the code is the code, and that is certainly something that I think would be a reasonable way to approach this particular problem. Because I'm very comfortable with the process out of planning and zoning. There's a lot of really great work that gets done out of planning and zoning, and I think that there's an opportunity for all of the public to be heard if there's going to be a wholesale change to zoning of a particular location or the code itself writ large. And I think that would certainly be a more appropriate way to handle this than on a one-off use variance through BZA. BZA is just not in a position to be able to take that broader perspective. They take what comes before them, the applications that are submitted, and they act on them, and they do a good job. This is an issue that is going to call for some broader consideration, as I pointed to in the letter, and planning and zoning certainly would be a good forum to handle that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So just so you know, the letter was not shared with council in advance because we can't take written testimony. People have to come and share their thoughts with us in person because
I am screen sharing the letter right now.
Do I have to read it into the record? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm thinking.
You just need to authenticate it under the rules of civil evidence.
Yes.
That's your letter.
It's a fair and accurate representation of the letter that I created, Mr.
Perfect.
Markowitz.
Thank you.
just like evidence stuff. Okay. Questions, conversation at this point. Do we have any other folks in the audience who are raising their hand? Any questions for Mr. Herdman, Mr. Shibley? Thoughts, feelings, songs you would like to sing? Next.
I want to invite that. Okay.
Aaron?
Yeah.
I do have one quick point. If you do look at sending this to P and Z for consideration of additional uses, one thing to look at is parking requirements. While it isn't too important for this application because the amount of size was so small, there is a different parking requirement for an office space occupation than there is for retail or retail service. So those would have to be considered when looking at amending any kind of use in existing zoning districts.
Okay, well, if we went that way, can you make sure that that's added to their list of to-dos to think about?
Yep. Just wanted people to be aware.
So I just want to make sure I'm fully clear. When we give a use variance, that variance, does that, like, let's say the barber shop is there for 5 years and they leave, does that use variance stay with the space, or is it only for this occupant? Like, just, I want to be super clear on this because this.
Yeah. Any variance runs with the land.
Yeah.
So once it's granted, it's good forever.
Forever, ever?
Yes.
As
Supreme
long
Court
as
of
it's
Ohio.
continuous use.
Yeah, Supreme Court of Ohio held there was a trailer park that was granted a variance, and like 25 years later, they decided to develop. And the city said, you can't develop. We've changed. You've changed. Everything's changed over 25 years. Supreme Court said, no, that use variance runs forever.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But what if it was stopped?
Use and area variances. Yeah.
Okay. But what if they stopped using it as a barber shop?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
They'd
matter.
still be able, another barber could come in and use it for a barber shop.
Forever and ever.
It wouldn't be for any other retail use. That's correct. It could only be for a barber shop.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Interesting. Okay.
Good question.
Could you say that again? It could be, it's not a retail use, it's a barbershop use. So if that person leaves, does it have to be, is it only granted that use, or does it have retail?
It's a retail service.
Okay.
But it doesn't grant a use variance for any retail service. It's just for a barber shop.
And I remind you, we're only talking about 200 square feet here. And can't it be a conditional use based on the occupant?
We don't have conditional uses.
No, yeah.
There's another type out there.
And what happens if it's not a bar, if it stays vacant for a year?
Then you've got to find a barber or go back and rezone it.
No, they could still use it for office space.
Office space, right?
Oh, okay.
But what if he put an insurance agent in there and then the insurance agent left and then a new barber wanted to come in? That would
He
be
could come
allowed
in.
if it stays with the land.
Right.
So-
Correct.
Could he knock down a wall with the next office and have, like, is the variance only for this 200 square feet, or could it be expanded if the wall was knocked down?
It's just for that suite. If he were to expand it, then they'd have to come back in for approval.
Okay.
And we don't have any intentions of expanding.
No, I understand. It's just, because there are these attachments to this type of variance, I just want to make sure.
Right.
Council really acts in a legislative manner. We don't do a lot of the code interpretation and variance granting. So I just want to make sure that I ask a lot of questions before we do anything, because I feel like there's a lot of impacts on both for you and for the shop owner, but for the community in a precedent space as well.
It's a good question. I think you hit it right on the head. Is there
Evans?
anybody else
Sorry.
that wants to speak?
Yeah, Mrs. Evans had her hand raised.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, I understand the need for the barber shop, but I also am very concerned about changing one small office in one small office building. And I would prefer to see this go to P&Z for review before we, I just think that's the proper thing to do.
I agree with that. I don't want to throw.
Well, let me interrupt you. Before you all start deliberating, you got to wait until all the evidence is
Right.
Well, is there anyone else out there that would like to speak?
Yes, there is a question that came in through our question and answer.
Yeah, Christy,
And-
the answer to that is members of BZA cannot testify at this hearing, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you are an attendee and would like to testify, please raise your hand. We'll give you a second.
I would like to speak one more time too.
Okay, go ahead, Larry.
I just would remind you that, again, with a smaller use, with a large parking field that, basically is a community parking lot, and a small building next door between us and the Art Center that has historically been on and off retail for the whole 30 years that I've owned 139 Bell. And we provide them with their parking. They've sold alpaca furs, they've sold artwork, they've sold regular furs. I mean, there's just been studios in there and different things selling all kinds of objects, and it's never been questioned.
Is that a different, do they have a different zoning designation?
Yeah, they're zoned, they're zoned differently.
The Art Center, our buildings, and this small building all are in the same zoning pad.
In some ways, doesn't that make it more important for planning and zoning to look at the zoning then in this area?
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
If
There's-
it's, I live up here. I know it's a confusing little area, but, in terms of what goes on there. So I don't know, that might be the way to go.
Rob, are you pulling up your zoning map?
Not being looked at, I just think that this
Yeah,
situation
give me a minute.
to a rapid.
I know, that's the problem. It's fine.
The
I'm
zoning
looking at the
is
map,
mixed.
the
Zoning
map
is
right
mixed in
now.
that area.
What's that?
The zoning is mixed. It's a retail across the street,
Right.
office. It's
What is
Well,
Valley
there's-
Art Center zoned as?
There's residential east and west of this building.
yes.
You'll see when Rob gets the map up.
'Cause Valley Art Center clearly has a retail shop as well.
But it's not an office building.
How long would something take at planning and zoning how long would action take to do some type of
About 3 months.
remedy? I know, 3 months, yeah.
Well, it could be done quicker than that. I mean, I've thought a lot about this since this came up. And looked at a possibility of a text amendment, something that's narrowly drawn and limited, not an overarching, big, huge zoning change. So if
I
we
can
agree to something at the next planning and zoning meeting, it could go to council, at its next meeting.
Oh, look, there's the zoning map.
Yeah, so it looks like it's across the street's retail business.
Well, that's Era. Yeah, that's the Bell Marathon and,
It's mixed.
Okay, go ahead.
I can certainly appreciate the discussion regarding an amendment to the code. I would just note that in my conversations with Joe, the owner, he's basically at the end of his rope in terms of how much longer he can wait. So I think barring a successful result for us tonight, I think that would be the end of it for him. And he would be looking to move on to some other options. So I just wanted to make sure that got put on the record.
so this is all zoned. What does the blue indicate, Rob? What is that?
It's office.
It's office. That's all office. Okay.
That's what the O stands for.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Down below. Okay. Oh, office. Okay.
And you have R150 surrounding it.
There's multifamily, retail business, limited industrial, like
R2F on the corner there.
your rainbow.
Yeah, that's the apartment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, multifamily.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's also
Yeah.
multifamily kitty corner at Phil Meethian and the whatever, Mr. Trace's properties.
But the point is that in that office area, that block there, that's office, there's several businesses that are in fact retail, or have traditionally been retail. So,
But are they retailers retail an incidental use of the main purpose, because that's what the code says, is that the retail and retail
Yeah.
services can't be the main use, but they can be an incidental use, right?
And
Am I
that's my
crazy?
understanding, that they're incidental to the main.
Yeah, like what's the historical society zoned?
It's incidental because their main purpose is that they're a museum.
Yeah,
But they're
they're a
also an
museum,
institution,
but
which is
they have a
different, so-
little store.
Well,
But it's
part of-
institution is different.
Doesn't matter. It's mostly that gallery / store that's in the middle there that's been kind of a gallery / shop for a while. So I think it's a
They're
gallery.
zoned, they're zoned office.
And there's zoned office, right, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Does somebody have a motion that they would like to make? Since I don't see any other hands up from participants.
Okay, I can make a motion. And I'll make the motion in the affirmative like BZA does. So I move to grant the use variance requested to allow a retail service business barber shop in the office zoning district at 139 Bell Street. The request is self-created. There are no unique conditions existing on the property. The property can be used for the purpose for which it was zoned. The requested use will violate the spirit of the planning and zoning code. And the request is not the minimum necessary to avoid an unnecessary hardship. And there are no special conditions unique to the property.
I will second Ms. Rogoff's motion.
Can I make one comment here? In 11.11.10 E, you have to either affirm, and modify, or reverse. So Nancy's motion was to grant the use variance. I think you have to say
Yeah.
it's to affirm the Board of
affirm,
Zoning Appeals
okay.
decision to grant the use variance.
And I'll amend the motion to move to affirm the use variance requested to allow a retail service business, a barber shop in the office zoning district at 139 Bell Street for the reasons previously stated.
I will second that. Okay, Mr. Jameson, roll call, please.
Okay, DiBernardo,
No.
Evans,
No,
Grube,
This is a tough one because I recognize the scenario in which our property owners that they're facing with this very bizarre world. But I think the discussion is pretty clear tonight that we have some cleaning up that we can maybe do on our code. And so I'm also going to vote no. Sorry.
Newell,
I'm going to vote no. I think this should go back to the Planning and Zoning Committee. I think it's important to keep our zoning codes intact.
Rocky,
Even though I voted yes in the previous one, I'm going to have to vote no based on the new information discovered in the conversation that we had, and that this is really a planning and zoning issue. And I recognize that this is a future state problem that we've got in the village, and we probably need to get working on this as fast as possible. So I'm going to vote no.
Rogoff,
No,
and Weibel.
You're on mute, Darren. Sorry.
I am going to, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to vote yes.
Okay, 6-1.
Actually, I have one more comment. Under 11.11.10,
Oh, good.
in C, it says in the event the council does not follow the decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals, council shall make its own decision and shall adopt conclusions of fact which support its decision and which are found in the record. Now, in Nancy's motion, she proposed certain findings, and you can adopt those as the majority of the board's findings, or if you choose, you can modify those or change them in some way.
Let's pretend that I need Nancy to repeat what her findings were in her motion.
Wait, can I ask one question before we do that? Can we include the caveat that this gets sent to, that this area gets sent to planning and zoning for review?
Yeah.
Well, there's two ways that can happen. Either the village could, on its own initiative, create an amendment, or the property owner could file an application to have the zoning code changed.
So can we make the village do it in this meeting, or does that have to be held by, done by?
I will definitely bring it up at planning and zoning. I thought I made that clear.
Yeah, for council to do that, you'd have to have, because this is a special purpose meeting, and it was notified only for the Board of Zoning Appeals, you couldn't pass that motion tonight. You'd have to wait until the council meeting next week and do that.
That's what I figured.
Good question, Rocky.
Yeah, I was just saying if we could get ahead of it.
Okay, Ms. Rogoff, could you go ahead and give us your conclusions of fact, just in case some of us
Okay.
don't have them all on. Yeah, just they're on the tip of our tongues.
All six.
Does that need another motion?
Yeah, you would do that in the form of a motion.
Okay. I don't have the code section in front of me, so
I can screen share that, Nancy.
I can't read the screen when you do that. It's too small.
Yeah, thank you.
Zoom in.
Get big. Okay.
Plus, I pressed my nose against the screen.
Please don't. Okay, make it bigger.
So as conclusions, findings and conclusions of fact, I move that the request is self-created, that there are no unique conditions existing on the property, that the property can be used for the purposes for which it is zoned, that the requested use will violate the spirit of the planning and zoning code. The request is not the minimums necessary to avoid the unnecessary hardship, and there are no special conditions unique to the property being reviewed. That there was no evidence presented on any of those topics.
Second.
So motion.
That was
by
a
Rogoff.
motion. Okay.
Yes, a motion by Rogoff and a second by DiBernardo, which means roll call, please, Mr. Jameson.
Okay, DiBernardo.
The motion was in the affirmative, correct? So,
Yes.
so
The conclusions of fact, right?
that we are approving the use? That was the affirmative? No.
No.
Okay. Aye. You get that right? No.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
What you're voting is you're saying you support her findings.
I support her findings.
That's,
Right,
yeah.
I do. I support her findings. Okay.
Evans,
Aye.
Grube,
Aye.
Newell,
Aye.
Rocky,
Aye.
Rogoff,
Aye.
and Weibel.
We can't hear you, Darren.
Oh, I'm sorry. Aye.
I think your microphone only works when you're very close to your computer.
Who seconded that again, Aaron?
Angie did.
Okay.
I used her formal name, Ms. DiBernardo. It probably,
We probably should do that more often.
I do when I say roll call.
No.
When I say roll call.
Don't take that as criticism. We all do it.
Okay, so we have nothing else left to cover, correct, Mr. Markowitz?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us on this very chilly night. I'm glad you had to go so far to come, and we will adjourn here at 7:54 and see you on Monday.
Thank you.
Good evening.